Alright, all you glorious gamers out there, welcome to the PlayersToo Podcast, the video game podcast for gamers like you, by gamers like you. You can find PlayersToo on all the social media, that's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at PlayersToo.com, that's PlayerSToo.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, that really helps us out. It does a huge amount for the exposure of the show. And while you're over there, if you could leave us a little review as well, again, that just helps us out even more. And thank you so much to anyone that's already done that for us. You are an absolute legend to us. All right, and on with the show. My name is Mark Henderson. With me, as always, Mr. Lewis Camley. We're back in your gaff, Lewis.
We are back in my gaff, yeah. Despite all best efforts, we are here again.
Yes, we are.
With a very belated Happy New Year to all the listeners.
Happy New Year, yes. God, it is so late. We were so late. We missed another episode. Oh my God. Moving house. Then the laptop gave up entirely, Lewis. Despite trying to get 2 new chargers, replaced various components, our issues still persisted. So here we are again at your house. I have to apologise to all the listeners. Almost entirely my fault, I have to say, due to technical issues and moving house. We have been a little bit late returning after Christmas, but there was fuck all news, so he's running missing out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we've come back at the right moment, I suspect.
Yes, we definitely have, which we will come to in a minute. But Lewis, what have you been playing this week, or since we've been off?
Yeah, since we've been off, to be honest, not tons, really. Not nearly as much as I expected to play over the kind of Christmas and New Year's break. Don't know why, really. Busy with Christmas stuff obviously for a bit, and then I just felt like I really needed to not do anything very much over the break, and I spent a lot more time just like reading and watching films and stuff. I read Jason Schreier's first book, which is relevant to this podcast, which was bought for me by your good self.
Very generously.
Yeah, and a not so subtle attempt to then get a shot of it.
I may have the book in my possession already.
But yeah, I really enjoyed that, and I'm reading his second book at the moment as well, which is so far so good. Really interesting stuff for anyone who's interested in how the industry works, how games get developed, the kind of issues around crunch in particular. But yeah, I just kind of wasn't in a gaming space, so I noodled away at Deathloop a little bit. I noodled away at the start of Metroid Dread, but I haven't really progressed either of them very much. I was enjoying them fine, just wasn't in the mood. Didn't want to be stressed out. That is the heart of this issue, Mark. Both games, particularly Metroid Dread, is very stressful at the start, and with Deathloop I just was never in the mood to get really stuck in and kind of learn its mechanics. And I did feel the last time I was playing that, which was maybe 4 or 5 days ago, that it had clicked a bit more, and I was kind of getting into a space where I was enjoying it a little bit more. So I'll definitely be going back to both of those in the not too distant future. But really since then I've just been playing our play along game Hades for the last couple of nights, which obviously will save discussion until the end of the month, but I have been putting some time into that and I have been enjoying it. That's a little spoiler for our conversation later in the month, but I've not beaten it yet. I've got loads to go, so plenty more where that came from.
Nice one, man. Nice one. Well, I have to say, I think the last time that we spoke to our dear listeners, Lewis, I was on the cusp of finishing Deathloop, which I have now done. And sorry to tell you this just as you're getting stuck into it or you feel as if you're finding rhythm with it, but honestly, it was pretty underwhelming to me, if I'm totally honest with you. I thought the story in the end was actually handled pretty poorly. Yeah. It felt as though throughout the game it was setting up a lot of stuff that just never paid off at all. The ending of the game in particular, which I know has received other criticism, really is one of the least satisfying endings to any game I think I've ever played, particularly in recent memory anyway. The gameplay in and of itself is good. I mean, it's not mind-blowing in any capacity, but it's good. It's a very competent, well-made game. I think that the concept of the game in and of itself is pretty good. But I do think that the folly of roguelikes, and I do know that this isn't even a particularly roguelike, is that they just become quite boring to play quite quickly. I mean, at the end of the day, you're still playing pretty much the same 4 levels again and again and again. Yeah, they are mixing that up a little bit. Yeah, they are changing it a little bit, but it's not that much. It's not that big a change, do you know what I mean? And really, like, by comparison to, like, bespoke level design that increases on a difficulty curve and whatever, the traditional way of making video games, it just doesn't compare to me at all. And basically, I just do find myself getting quite bored with that style of gameplay quite quickly, and not trying to foreshadow too much to our play-along game, Hades, which, again, we will not spoil, we will talk about at the time, but yeah, I have a difficult relationship with roguelikes, we'll say that much.
Yeah, and you've been playing a fair lot of them over the last
I really
while,
fucking have.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, I don't know why. I don't know how this has happened to me.
It's just the vogue thing, I think, just now in game development, but which is probably because it can allow a smaller game to be beefed up into a much bigger
Sure,
concept,
of course. I understand why they're doing it, and it makes a lot of sense, particularly for smaller developers, but this one is like a AAA sort of a roguelike.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Essentially, yeah.
It just got quite boring quite quickly, honestly. Like, that is ultimately how I feel about it. It's not that they didn't have interesting ideas, although the narrative, again, I didn't think was handled particularly well in the end, but it's not that it didn't have interesting ideas. It really did. I thought that it could have went in more interesting directions than it ended up, but yeah, wasn't Game of the Year contention for me, I have to say, despite as many nominations. The last time we spoke, which is the beginning of December, was when we were talking about this. We were talking about it being such a dominant name at Game of the Year, and really, for me, just not of that caliber. Not at all, really. Sad times, man.
Well, these things happen, right? I mean, from what I've played, I've been enjoying it thus far, but I knew that there was issues with the story. I've heard that basically since it launched, and I agree to a certain extent. Like, my overriding feeling while playing it so far has been an eagerness not to be killed, and I think I'm probably playing it in quite a boring way at times to avoid having to replay sections too much, because I don't really want to have to go through that. And so I'm being super cagey, I'm being more stealthy and hiding a lot when I probably should just be getting stuck in and seeing what happens and using the powers and stuff like that. So I think the structure affects how you have to approach the gameplay, or certainly how I've been very early doors. And if you're not enjoying that and then you have to do it again and again and again and again and again, then that's not ideal, you know?
No, it's not. But I do have to admit, one of the things that I enjoyed most about it was the fact that it did introduce a lot of stealth elements to it. Like, I did actually like that part of it, you know, like I didn't mind playing the game in that capacity. I thought you would have liked that as well because of the Hitman love and so on, you know. But yeah, I do understand it is quite cagey. Like, it's not an actiony action game, you know what I mean? Although it can be,
that's it.
But a lot of the time it isn't, and a lot of the time it's much more in your benefit for it not to be, frankly, as well, which, again, I don't know, maybe it is, maybe it's just the slow progress just made it feel slow. It made it feel a bit dull to me, made it feel as though it was wearing a bit thin a bit quickly. That is probably how I could sum it up the most. It felt as if it overstayed its welcome, and it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
Anyway, Lewis, I think it's time for the news. All right, Lewis, news item number 1. And I do have to say, just before we start here, we'll be covering news items from this week and some other news items from the time that we've missed, basically because there hasn't been a huge amount of news, but there's also been some really cool stuff that I still want to talk about. So, yeah, get over it. But, Lewis, news item number 1, and my God, by far and away the biggest thing that has happened has only just happened today. We're only just processing it right now. Microsoft have bought Activision Blizzard for just under $70 billion, Lewis. $70 billion. Absolutely unreal. This also includes King Games as well, the mobile developer. Remember when we thought 7.5 billion was a lot for Bethesda? Remember those days? Also, in the time that we have been off, Take-Two have actually bought Zynga Games, another mobile developer, for $12.7 billion, which very briefly was the biggest acquisition in video games history. And then Microsoft have just blown it out of the water with $70 billion. Absolutely unbelievable. No one else in the industry, I don't think, can make that purchase other than Microsoft, either because they simply do not have the capital, or it would be foolish for them to put so many eggs in one basket, basically. Even Tencent, which, by the way, as of this recording, or at the end of Q4 2021, was the 10th most valuable company in the world, was still 4.5 times smaller than Microsoft. So even at the top, the gap between Microsoft, who are only behind Apple, and Tencent, who are still an absolutely gigantic company, is still so unbelievably vast. This now makes Microsoft the world's third largest gaming company by revenue, behind only Tencent and Sony, and that is something that they have said in their own statement. It has also been confirmed that Activision CEO and known scumbag Bobby Kotick will actually remain in charge, annoyingly, at least until the acquisition is complete. But both Microsoft and Phil Spencer were very keen to point out that Bobby Kotick would be reporting to Phil Spencer, which for me means that Spencer has every right after this acquisition is complete to clean house there if he wants, and I think that he should do that, and I also think that he will do that, because frankly, considering some of the other comments that he's made around Activision Blizzard and the Activision Blizzard situation, if he didn't do that, he would look like a massive fucking hypocrite, and I do not think that Phil Spencer wants those optics, frankly. But what does this actually mean for gamers? Well, Phil Spencer has said that As soon as the deal closes, they will get as many Activision Blizzard games on Games Pass as possible, which is very similar to what they did with Bethesda as well. And if you want to play the next installment of Call of Duty or Overwatch or Warcraft or Diablo or StarCraft or Tony Hawk's or Spyro or Crash Bandicoot on a console, you will probably have to buy an Xbox, which is saying something because those last three, Tony Hawk, Spyro and Crash Bandicoot, were very much synonymous with PlayStation for a long, long period of time. I mean, I know that there's a bit of information come out fairly recently, by which I mean in the last hour or so, that suggests that Phil Spencer doesn't want to, quote-unquote, take communities off PlayStation or whatever. But, I mean, this is a truly insane deal, and ultimately I think that all those IP that I just mentioned, any new installments of them will be exclusive to Xbox consoles.
Yeah, I think you're probably spot on with that. I don't think we need to relitigate the great debates of that we all had.
Exactly, we know what happens in this situation. We know.
Also, we've heard Big Phil say more or less these same statements around Bethesda, and then as soon as the deal closed, they changed this tune, and it was all about delivering great games for people on Xbox's
Absolutely,
ecosystem.
Of course it is. They just spent $70 billion. They're not spending $70 billion to line Sony's pockets. It's not happening,
and certainly not with these IPs. I don't think. I think part of the issue with the Bethesda deal partly was just that we'd never really seen anything like that, and those games had always been big cross-platform games. Sure. They had big audiences everywhere. They were still kind of active. The slate that you mentioned there from Activision is kind of mixed in that way. There's obviously Call of Duty, which comes out like every year and it's the multi-platform game, right? It's it's the kind of game that started a lot of where we're at the moment. But then there's some more dormant franchises there, like Crash and Spyro, that are, they've had their kind of remasters. I mean, Crash 4, I would imagine, will be the last that we would have seen of Crash for a while. It's so odd to think as well that that was created by Naughty Dog.
Yeah, exactly. It was PlayStation's mascot.
Yeah.
It was the character created in response to Sonic the Hedgehog and Mario. Do you know what I mean? And now it's an Xbox IP. It's crazy.
It's quite mad that we're in this position once again when this huge seismic shift is happening. I feel pretty mixed about it, to be honest. I mean, I think it's probably overall going to be good for the staff at Activision Blizzard, you would hope.
Well, I'd hope so. I mean, frankly, it doesn't seem as if it could get much worse.
No, it doesn't seem like it could get much worse, although, out of the frying pan into the fire, you never quite know what's going to happen.
You don't, but what I don't want to happen either is that I don't want this to stop investigations, and I don't want this to stop people being held accountable, even if they're not still at the company. Looking at you, Bobby Kotick,
for example, certainly the criminal investigations that are going on around
absolutely,
all that,
like those people still very much have to be held accountable for what happened at Activision Blizzard before this acquisition, do you know what I mean? And that should be unhindered by Microsoft.
Totally.
And I sincerely hope that it is not in any way hindered by Microsoft.
Yeah, I don't think that they would step in the way of any of that. I think you're right that they will keep Bobby Kotick in place until the acquisition is complete, which may still be like a year away, by the way. This isn't something that's about to happen kind of overnight.
I heard June next year. So this is not a fast thing. This is not a fast acquisition that's going to be in place in the next couple of months. No, this will be over a year away, is what I've heard.
Which is probably why he's being kept in place there. It's basically just keep everything ticking along until this is over, and then, I think you're right. I think he'll go. I think various others will go. Also, what's in it for him at that point? He's already made his... I mean, I have a list of kind of good and bad reasons to support this or to be kind of concerned about it, and I mean, one of the major negatives is that he is going to make something in the region of like $400 million from the sale alone, and then when he is pushed out of the company, I think there was reports earlier that there's clauses in his contract that would see him net close to another $300 million. And when you
capitalism,
and then when you consider that some of those developers may well lose their jobs from all of this, because Microsoft don't necessarily need those full teams, all of them, and considering again that we've for months and months been talking about how Activision are folding all their teams into Call of Duty, like Toys for Bob were suddenly working on Call of Duty. Like, Microsoft will not need that many teams working on Call of Duty, I don't suspect, and could probably rationalise that. So there could be losers on the development side, but overall, hopefully it's better for the culture. But the other big talking point is consolidation. It is a huge problem and it doesn't feel great. And I want to make that clear that consolidation does not mean that Xbox is getting exclusives and that's what we're angry about. I don't actually play any Activision games. This doesn't affect me in the slightest. I don't care about Call of Duty. Like, if I'd never get to play it on my console, I don't care. But this is lots of jobs, lots of IP, lots of talent all in one umbrella. And Xbox are, as great as Xbox have been recently, they might shut studios, they might cancel games, they might just say, actually, we want all of you working on Call of Duty, or we want all of everyone who isn't working on Call of Duty to be working on Halo. They have a history of forcing teams to work on one or two IP and not really developing stuff more, broadly than that. I think Game Pass changes that, and that's one of the positives I can see from all of this, is that Activision's other IP might not be as dormant as they are at the moment, because Xbox needs games on that service. Not even top tier games, but actually stuff like Crash Bandicoot makes sense.
Yeah, every level. They need stuff at every level.
So there's good and bad for all of this, but it is seismic, and it will hurt PlayStation players ultimately if you're interested in a lot of their games. Call of Duty's revenue going from PlayStation is not good for Sony.
That's huge as well. And many times in the past, it seems as though PlayStation have had sort of semi-exclusive access or early access as well from Activision to Call of Duty stuff. Do you know what I mean? There has been a legacy, relationship there. Marketing stuff has always been done around PlayStation as well, and not Xbox. So there's definitely a history there between PlayStation and Activision around the Call of Duty franchise. Yeah, man, that will hurt PlayStation big time. Big time, definitely. As you said, consolidation is the other big thing. In reality, I think in a little over 2 years, 3 of the biggest gaming publishers in the world have now become one publisher, which is not great, to be honest with you. And when the Bethesda thing happened, I was sort of thinking, that was consolidation as well. Of course it was. But at the time I was sort of thinking, this actually makes a lot of sense for Microsoft. I could sort of justify that in my head a lot more, but now we're talking 70 billion. If they are willing to spend 70 billion on Activision, no one's safe. No. Do you know what I mean? They could buy or do whatever they want because they just have so much more capital ready to go. They can take risks that other companies can't take. And if they're willing to drop this amount on Activision, then they could drop any amount on anyone. Everyone's got a price, and no matter what that price is, Microsoft can pay it. And in a lot of ways, that is a major problem, do you know what I mean, for competition in the industry. I know that this only makes them the third by revenue, do you know what I mean, after Tencent and Sony as well. But the fact that another 2 companies that were in that mix have just vanished now is equally bad. And there does seem to be as well legitimate concern that the US government could get involved in this around antitrust and anti-monopoly laws. I know President Biden has very recently introduced some sort of pro-competition legislation in America as well that is specifically targeting big tech companies and trying to stop them from doing precisely this. So I wouldn't be surprised if the US government get involved. Do I think that there would be enough there to stop this acquisition? Almost certainly not.
No.
But it's of governmental concern. You know what I mean? That is the level that we're talking at here. This is an absolutely colossal acquisition. It cannot be understated. For everything that we said about Bethesda, it's 10 times more now. Literally 10 times more.
Yeah, exactly. 10 times more. Yeah, it is huge, and we won't know the full ramifications of it for quite a while yet, and there'll be interminably long discourse about it on
Oh, sure. If you think this is the last time we were going to talk about this, you're very wrong.
But I guess the one benefit now is that we have seen how the Bethesda deal all shaped up. I think we basically know how Xbox will approach this. So yeah, I think actually the other thing, because we are quite console focused as a podcast, it shouldn't be overstated how important that mobile company is going to be to them. That is giving them access to. Do they do Candy Crush? Is that right?
I believe it is them that does Candy Crush. You just seen how much money Take-Two just spent on Zynga. King is equally as big.
Exactly.
Equally as big. You know what I mean? That space generates so much money. It just so much money.
And that just puts Xbox onto so many. At the moment, you're talking hundreds of millions of consoles or whatever, or PCs and consoles. But everyone has a mobile phone, and if they can tap into gaming markets that way, if they can expand Game Pass to be covering mobile games or whatever as well in future, there's a lot there. And so while
Game Pass mobile's not out of the realm of possibility.
Well, exactly, right? And so I think that's the thing. A lot of this discussion is going to focus on basically, will Call of Duty still be on PlayStation? And I think you're right, Mark. I don't think it will. I don't
think the next mainline one will be. I think Warzone will be.
I think that's exactly what I think. I think Warzone will stay because there's no real reason for Microsoft to remove that, because it's free to play, and so they're just going to take a cut of all the microtransactions. Definitely. And there's still 100 million people on PlayStation platforms. But yeah, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 or whatever the hell the next one's going to be, I don't even know.
Already had that. Good try, man.
I was trying to think. I knew there was a Modern Warfare 2. Whichever the next one is, I don't think that'll come to PlayStation. Maybe this year.
What are you spending 70 billion on if not for stuff like that?
Well, for Call of Duty, yeah, exactly. So
yeah, unbelievable. Truly
here
unbelievable.
We go again.
To the point I can barely fathom that it's happening, but here we are. All right, let's news item number 2. Speaking of Phil Spencer, he has said in an interview with IGN that he feels that it is inevitable that Games Pass gets competition, specifically from competitors like Sony. To which I say, I agree, Phil, but we are now 4 years in and we're still waiting. When asked about competition to Games Pass, Phil Spencer said this to IGN.
When I'm talking to our teams, I talk about it as an inevitability. So for us, we should continue to innovate, continue to compete, because the things that we're doing might be advantages that we have in the market today, but they're just based on us going first, not that we've created something that no one else can go create. I like it because it feeds our energy on what are the next things that we should be working on as we continue to build out the things that we've done in the past. Because I think the right answer is to ship great games, ship them on PC, ship them on console, ship them on cloud, make them available day one in the subscription, and I expect that's what our competitor will do.
This obviously comes off the back of recent rumours around PlayStation merging, specifically PlayStation Now and PlayStation Plus, but also probably the PlayStation Collection as well, into some sort of tiered service, which is obviously aimed at taking on Games Pass. However, looking at the Bloomberg article, which originally broke that rumour around this new PlayStation service, which is called Spartacus, I believe, there was no mention of including games day one, first-party games day one, which for me, and for Phil Spencer, because he says it in his statement there, if you're going to seriously take on Games Pass, for me that really is an absolute must. It is an absolute must. PlayStation CEO Jim Ryan has also previously said that PlayStation first-party games would not be on a subscription service because he believed it would be unsustainable. But if we know anything about statements made by Jim Ryan, it doesn't necessarily indicate where things are going in the future, Lewis. But, I mean, ultimately, something is happening at PlayStation. It looks as if that they are going to be providing a subscription model of some description to take on Games Pass. But to me, honestly, it reads much more like it will rely on back catalogue games and backwards compatibility, specifically PS3 games, which we have also seen might have leaked this week as well. For me, it seems as though it's almost ticking slightly more towards a Nintendo Switch Online type model than it is towards a Games Pass type model, because in my head the day one stuff is so important, right?
I think it is really important, and I think that would obviously be the best version of this. I don't have any doubt that the situation for Jim Ryan and everyone at PlayStation could have changed since he said that. I mean, he had to say that at that point because they weren't planning on doing it, right?
Yeah, sure.
So,
but I don't know, man. Like, there's been mutterings about stuff like this for quite a while, even pre-PlayStation 5, you know?
Yeah. But at the end of the PS4 generation, he isn't going to say, actually, we're looking at putting our games on a subscription model, because then they might have hurt their sales, right? They as a company are going to want to project this, like, we don't need to do that because you all want to buy our games, but they might well have seen that the numbers are better in the other direction now. Like, Game Pass is proving a lot of things to a lot of people. It might not be all the lessons that we want to see, but they will be studying that and seeing what the effect is. I think without day one additions, it could still be a really good package, but it will be lacking something, and it could even hurt sales of first party games, because if something that you're not absolutely determined to play on day one launches, and you know it will come to your subscription service, but you just have to wait a couple of months, I think a lot of people might do that. So, you know, you might not buy Ghost of Tsushima 2 on day one if you think, I'll wait 4 months and it'll be on the subscription that I'm paying for. Having said that, like, for me, an expansion of the PlayStation Plus collection to include way more stuff, plus the kind of back catalogue games that you're talking about from PS3 and beyond, and something of the PS Now model, all of that put together and charged at a reasonable price is still a good offer, and I wouldn't like sniff at that. It's not as good as Game Pass, but then you know, Xbox had to throw a Hail Mary pass to catch up, and they did it, and they are continuing to do it. But I don't think PlayStation has to do that yet, but I hope that they do. I hope that they put them on.
Very much so, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? I mean, I don't disagree with you. I think that if they do Games Pass, but it's like 75% of what Games Pass actually is, you know what I mean? Yeah, I think that that's a good offer, and I think that as a PlayStation owner, I would definitely sign up for that. Let's not fuck about it. You know what I mean? I almost certainly would be there at the top tier available. I'm sure a lot of other people would be the same as well. However, it will always be compared to the fact that it's not as good as Games Pass. All the discourse around it would be, oh, it's nice that they've done that, but it's not as good as Games Pass. I think that they really have to try a bit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's been a while, I think, that PlayStation have had to try a bit, because they've just been in the dominant position for so long. And I don't know, you don't want to be complacent. Like, don't let your competitors continue to catch up, because there's only so much that they can catch up before they overtake you.
Well, this
you
is
know
it.
what I mean?
Yeah, and it does put PlayStation in a difficult position because it's hard for them to take risks in the face of a competitor who can pay $70 billion to beef up their service.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if they are looking at this literally today now at what their service is going to be, they might be thinking, actually, we better think about putting The Last of Us Part 3 on here day and date, because maybe Xbox is going to eat our lunch if we don't do these kind of things. It remains to be seen. I think this is epic shithousery, by the way, from Phil Spencer. I think he's put so much pressure on them with this statement.
He so has.
He has called what they need to do, and what he's called that they need to do is exactly what he's done, and he probably knows that they can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, he was asked the question, he just answered.
Yeah.
But his answer, I agree, has basically put a lot of pressure on Sony.
I think it's an incredible piece of business comms. That I was so impressed, and I'm mainly a PlayStation guy, but I was like, fair enough, man, you know what you're doing here.
Oh yeah, if there's one thing we can both agree on Phil Spencer, is that he knows what he's fucking doing. Alright, list news item number 3. Sony have announced their PSVR2 at a keynote speech at CES 2022. It will have 4K OLED displays with two 2000 by 2040 resolution panels, one per eye. It will also have a refresh rate of up to 120 Hz. It will have a field of vision of 110 degrees. It will also feature quote-unquote inside-out tracking via integrated cameras embedded in the headset, which basically means you don't need external cameras. It will also connect to the PlayStation 5 via one cable, which means that it is not wireless, but it's the next best thing, let's be honest. It will also feature 3D audio, building on the audio that the PlayStation 5 already has, and the controllers, which were announced way last year, back in March, will feature adaptive triggers and haptic feedback, very similar to the DualSense as well. They have even announced a new game for PSVR2, and it's a new installment in Horizon, would you believe it or not? It's called Horizon Call of the Mountain. It will be specifically designed for PSVR2 and will be made by Guerrilla and newly acquired Fire Spirit Games as well. There is no official price yet, but the speculation seems to be that it will be between $300 and $400. I very strongly suspect it will be at the top of that range. We know that PlayStation have very aggressively marketed PSVR before, but I think with component shortages and the increased quality of the components in the headset, I think it's very difficult to imagine it being cheaper than that, if I'm totally honest. I'm not going to claim to know a great deal about VR headsets, if I'm totally honest, but what I am surprised about is that it is competitive, very competitive, I would say, with the Quest 2 and the Index. It even beats both of them in terms of their resolution, which is very surprising. If they can put this out at a reasonable price, I think it will probably be the best-selling VR headset on the market again, just because a lot of people will have the hardware to use it sitting in their living room, you know what I mean? Do you think you would ever get this?
Oh, potentially. I mean, I do like the idea of getting involved in the VR space. I'm just not desperate to pay $300 to $400 for a kind of peripheral that will have some good games and have some experiences, shall we say, things that aren't quite full games. I think you're probably right. Like this, I mean, it's great in terms of the spec, and it is living up to what else is on the market just now. It would be ideal if it was fully wireless, but like you say, as close as it gets, I don't think it will be a big issue for people. The flip side really is that not actually that many people have PS5s yet, you know what I mean? And if that is what you're going to need to run it, and I don't know if they've said that specifically, but
I believe that they have said that specifically. Actually, I think you need a PlayStation 5. This will not run on PlayStation 4.
I mean, that would have been the assumption, certainly. We don't know when this is going to launch yet. There's rumours that it's going to be holiday 2022. I wouldn't be surprised if it slips because of component shortages and all that kind of stuff. But really, if they can't sell more PS5s, then they probably don't want to launch that yet. I mean, not that the PS5 isn't selling like gangbusters, obviously it is, but it's too difficult for a lot of people to get a hold of them just now. Hopefully, though, the people that do are the kind of early adopters for something like PSVR 2. So I think it's cool. I really like that PlayStation are continuing to invest in this space because not everyone else is, and it could kind of die a death without the right kinds of backers. But yeah, for me, it would almost certainly come down to the price point, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I think that'll be the case for most people as well. I agree. I'm very happy that they're still investing here. Will I actually end up with one of these headsets? I honestly don't know. But I like that PlayStation are still there, still investing in this space. I like that Valve are doing the same. And as long as the two of them are at it, I think that VR can live on for at least a little while longer. Alright, let's news item number 4. It has been revealed that the ESA have cancelled the in-person version of E3 this year due to COVID concerns. It has been assumed that they will be doing an online version, but we'll come on to that in a minute. The ESA have made this statement, the Venture Beat.
Due to the ongoing health risks surrounding COVID-19 and its potential impact on the safety of exhibitors and attendees, E3 will not be held in person in 2022. We remain incredibly excited about the future of E3 and look forward to announcing more details soon.
Okay, first and foremost, COVID is still very much a major problem, particularly for mass gatherings like this. I always think it's better to err on the side of caution when it comes to people's health specifically. However, I think that the general consensus around this is that this is a little premature for this announcement. This is in the face of GDC, which is scheduled to have an in-person event and a major conference that is happening in March, for example. And I'm not entirely sure what is happening with the DICE Awards, but I'm pretty confident they are having an in-person event, whether it be limited or otherwise. So for the ESA to cancel E3, which is usually held in June this early, is quite strange. Now, that being said, this was leaked, so maybe this announcement was forced a little bit, but industry analyst Mike Futter has said this in a tweet.
This is spin. I heard from sources in mid-November, before Omicron's emergence at the end of that month, that the ESA had abandoned their dates for the Los Angeles Convention Center.
Now, multiple other industry folk, including Jason Schreier and the like, all agreed with this as well, and multiple of them said that it would be incredible if this was a knee-jerk reaction to Omicron, you know what I mean? But this decision is just baffling, to be honest with you. Like, it is assumed again that there will be an online event. And if that is the case, why not just say that? Like, Jeff Keighley has shown that you do not have to have an in-person event to have a successful showcase. As of Microsoft, as of Ubisoft, as of PlayStation, as of Nintendo. Why not just say that? It's just a very weird decision by the ESA on the back of many other weird decisions by the ESA, as they frankly continue to fight to be relevant here, do you know what I mean? And then you were telling me that, according to Rebecca Valentine, another fantastic industry journalist who knows her shit, she doesn't even know if it's going to happen at all, online or otherwise.
Her investigation had been going on into this for months, apparently, and on the day that the ESA made this announcement, she tweeted saying, to clear up confusion, the ESA said absolutely nothing about a digital event, and when pressed, they couldn't confirm one. All they said was that the in-person event was cancelled. Now, that obviously doesn't mean that there won't be a digital E3, but I think you hit the nail on the head there, really, Mark. What is their relevance? If all those companies that you listed there have proven that they can do it online, then what is the purpose of E3? And in fact, what even is E3 if by the time we get there, Microsoft is the entirety of the E3 stage anyway?
It's the Microsoft showcase. It's 4 days long. Oh yeah, man. I don't know what the ESA are doing. I don't know what's going to become of E3, to be honest with you. It's really sad.
I think it's done, man. I think it's done.
To be honest with you, I wouldn't be surprised. I really wouldn't be surprised, which would be very, very sad, because, I mean, we launched this podcast at E3. Do you know what I mean? E3 was like the Oscars, for lack of a better term, for video games for such a long time. It was so exciting to watch. I always, for years and years and years, used to watch it. But yeah, I really think it is fighting to remain relevant, if it even can remain relevant now. And yeah, this could be it. This could be them donezo, unfortunately. Alright, let's finish off as we always do with a couple of shout-outs. Shout-out number 1, there has been a lot of NFT bullshit since we've been off this. Oh my good God.
There certainly has.
And quite frankly, in equal parts, it is infuriating me and depressing the fuck out of me, I've got to say. So far, Ubisoft, EA, Take-Two, Zynga, even before they were bought by Take-Two, Square Enix and Sega have all made their intentions clear that they plan on introducing NFTs to their games in some capacity. And most recently, famed voice actor Troy Baker has also been peddling some NFT company he's now affiliated with, which seems to look to take the jobs of other voice actors, ? Thankfully, and rightly, the internet came down on him like a fucking ton of bricks. Since then, Alana Pierce and Jim Sterling, both are huge names in the video games industry, have discovered that NFTs are being sold of them and their IP, Which just goes to show that this is just a massive con. It's just a bunch of people selling shit they don't have the rights to people that are dumb enough to buy them. And I don't mean that to be insulting to anyone that's bought NFTs, but really you have to think about what is actually happening here, because if you've bought an NFT, you own absolutely fuck all. You have a receipt that says that you bought something potentially from someone who had no right to sell it, from what I can gather is what an NFT actually is. And in video games, if Ubisoft or whoever tells you that you own some NFT for a cosmetic item, you don't own that fucking item. You don't own that item any more than if you got it in a fucking loot box. In no real way do you own that item. It is them forcing value on things which have none and making you pay for them. Please, if you're going to take anything away from this rant, please do not fall for this. Please do not give them the satisfaction of giving them your money for no fucking reason. Because so far as I can tell, this brings absolutely nothing to players. It brings absolutely nothing to game design, except for another revenue stream for big publishers who, quite frankly, already have too much fucking money, Lewis.
Yeah, I mean, we got around microtransactions by and large. That the predatory,
fucking barely, and they're still there.
The predatory nature of that was finally being challenged, and now look at this. There's a new way to grift people out of their money. It's ludicrous. It's bullshit. If you fall for the idea that you can share items across games, it is provably nonsense, and there's plenty of game developers tweeting reasons why it will never happen. Do your research if you're looking at any of this shit, because it is just a heap of nonsense. And I think that the bubble will burst. Ubisoft's launch of these went fucking terribly.
Oh, it was fucking glorious. It was so good. That is one thing I will say, is that the people in the video games industry and gamers out there have come back hard against this, and I'm so fucking pleased to see that. I never like to see people getting like hounded or anything like that online, but when it's big businesses like this, quite frankly, fuck them. And particularly when they're trying to grift people out of money, I have no sympathy for them whatsoever. Fuck this and fuck NFTs. I have no time for them. Alright, shout out number 2. An industry analyst has suggested that there will not be a Switch Pro at all before we get a successor in 2024. You may remember that before the OLED Switch was announced, Bloomberg caught wind that Nintendo were working on a 4K model of the Switch that was rumoured to be the fabled Switch Pro, Lewis. And they even went so far as to claim that 11 game developers at least had toolkits for this new version of the Switch Pro. So very much out there in the industry. Then the OLED Switch got announced, and I think we all collectively went, what the fuck is this? This is not what we were promised at all. So going by the no smoke without fire ethos that we seem to have here on PlayersToo, I think that it would be a true shock if Bloomberg reported that without having substantial evidence and multiple sources saying the same thing. Do you know what I mean? So whatever that 4K model for the Switch was, I think that either because of COVID or the chip shortage or both, they could not release that Switch Pro model in the form that they wanted it at the time that they needed it to come out. Because in reality, and I agree with this analyst, we are probably 2 years away from getting an announcement of whatever the next gen version of the Switch is. So for me, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever to then start manufacturing another Switch model just before you're about to start manufacturing your next gen model. You know what I mean? We're too close now. They've passed the point, you know what I mean? If you're going to do a mid-gen upgrade, totally fine, but they've now sort of missed the opportunity as well a little bit with the OLED Switch, and I sort of feel for them, do you know what I mean? It's difficult circumstances and whatever, but I do sort of agree. I don't think that we're getting a Switch Pro, and 2024 makes a lot of sense for me for a new Switch.
Definitely on that one, yeah. I could completely see that that's how things have gone, that they've basically pushed this back so far that they've decided, let's just actually change the components that we were planning to put out a little bit and release it as a Switch 2 in a couple of years. I think that's fine ultimately. You know, I don't think we're really desperate for a hardware upgrade from them at the moment. And
well, I would have bought a Switch Pro, Liz, I'm not going to lie to you, but yeah, I think at this point I'd rather just have the Switch.
Exactly, you might as well wait, yeah.
Alright, let's shout out number 3. Techland have announced that Dying Light 2 would be at least 500 hours to fully complete. Now, I think that they made this announcement, Lewis, and expected people to go, oh wow, that's amazing, so much content. What actually happened is people went, oh my god, I'm not playing your game for that long, you maniacs. Now, to be fair to them, they then went on to clarify that this would be to absolutely max out the game, to do literally every single thing in their game, every single piece of content. It would take about 500 hours. Subsequently, they have announced that the main story will take about 20 hours, rather predictably, and that the main story plus all the side missions will take about 80 hours, which is still a pretty long game, to be honest with you. And for trophy hunters out there, I don't think it takes anywhere near as long as 500 hours to get that either, judging by the trophy list and stuff like that. I mean, honestly, I think this was blown a little bit out of proportion, to be totally honest with you, but I do think Techland are largely at fault. But Lewis, how long is too long?
Well, 500 hours is, I mean,
500. I think we can both agree 500 hours is probably too long.
I mean, honestly, I think 80 hours in some ways is too long, but yeah, it depends on what the game is and what it's trying to do and all that. What's interesting for Dying Light 2 in particular in this conversation is that all of this indicates that Dying Light 2 is a completely different game from the first game, which was much more of an action parkour, explore a city and survive type thing, whereas, I mean, you can't make a game that's 500 hours long that basically isn't a massive RPG, right? Like, it immediately made me think of The Witcher and how big and expansive that is, and it feels like they must be trying to emulate something of that scale or games like that, which does make me slightly less interested in playing it, I've got to say. But I think overall this was, I mean, it was blown out of proportion because they blew their own shit out of proportion.
Oh yeah,
really,
I agree.
So.
The blown out of proportion is on them. Yeah, 100%. All right, and final shout out number 4. God of War has come out on PC, Lewis, and fairly unsurprisingly to anyone that's already played it, it has went down very well indeed. It's currently sitting with a Metacritic score of 93 on PC. It currently has an overwhelmingly positive rating on Steam, with 97% of reviews being positive. It is by far the best launch that Sony have had on PC. God of War had 73,500 peak concurrent players at launch, which is more than Horizon had at 56,500 and much more than Days Gone had at 27,500. It is also the best-selling game on Steam at launch this week as well, ahead of Monster Hunter Rise and the Elden Ring pre-orders, which I actually think is maybe more impressive. So it is undeniably a success, which has led many people to suggest PlayStation, like Xbox, should be putting all their exclusives on PC day one. And while I basically think that this is very wishful thinking, it's sort of getting harder and harder to suggest that that wouldn't be that bad an idea, to be honest.
No. I think you're right about that. I still think they'll maintain a gap because they still want to sell units. They're not going to make any money out of PC hardware sales. But yeah, it is clear that PC gamers want PlayStation games. It is clear that they play well there. I mean, really, if they can get The Last of Us, I mean, that might even explain why we're getting this slightly daft, in my opinion, The Last of Us remaster as soon as
they can put it on PC.
Yeah, because you upgrade it all for that. If we can get those two games and Bloodborne onto PC, I think they're going to make a killing off of that, and they're going to get a lot of new fans. So.
Well, allegedly there's a potential Bloodborne remake or potential Bloodborne 2. Now, listen, with Dirty Dream, do not take this away from me. I just had to speak about NFTs for ages, right? But if something like that happened, that sort of tracks with what you're saying there with The Last of Us was all I was trying to say. But yeah, games like that, it's madness to me that Bloodborne isn't. That whole community is there, right? Crazy stuff. Anyway, Lewis, I think it is time for a beer, and then we'll be back for Topic of the Week. And we are back for Topic of the Week. Topic of the Week this week is a look forward to gaming in 2022, Lewis.
It is indeed, yeah. This is obviously a topic that we've been kind of planning to do for the last couple of weeks, but
yes, it has.
But it still feels super relevant and important to just cast our eyes forward through what is shaping up in a lot of people's eyes, and obviously this is kind of what we're going to be discussing, but it's shaping up to be quite an exciting year for video games, I think. And I think actually more than, I mean, recent years have been so whatever, you could debate that till the cows come home, but there's always been other big things going on. But this year is really exciting for the actual games specifically. We're not expecting a big console launch or any of that stuff. Like, we're really just talking about games.
Yeah, fantastic looking video games.
Yeah,
and a lot of them.
Well, hopefully a lot of them. I mean, it should be said, obviously everything that we're about to say could change, and COVID is still having its impact on the game's release schedule, but there is some really exciting stuff coming in the not too distant future. And so I guess we're going to talk a bit about some of those games and what the various platforms, particularly the big three console platforms, are doing. I'm going to ask you some questions about how you think this year is going to shape up, and if we've got time I'll touch on some other stuff, because there are, I mean, I said there's no big console launches, but actually we're expecting the Steam Deck in about a month.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is really exciting. The Playdate's coming out. There's all sorts of other things going on in the gaming space. But Mark, let's get started. Let's talk about some games.
Let's talk about some games.
I'm not going to run through like fully month by month. There's a really stacked start of the year that we can talk through, and then we might jump to the platforms.
Everything that was delayed from then the last year.
Basically, a lot of that. And starting off this month with the release of Pokemon Legends Arceus, that seems to be the one of Nintendo's biggest hits for the year ahead. Are you excited about this? You are the Pokemon fan on this show, but you were showing me some, I don't know, some negativity there maybe.
I must admit, that in theory, yes, it is exciting because it's Pokemon Breath of the Wild, or at least it's trying to be, which is
as
sort
close to
of
that
what
as
we
it's ever
want.
been.
Which is sort of where I think it should be going. However, the more and more I see of that game, the more and more I think that game doesn't look very good. I have to say. So yeah, we'll wait and see when it comes out. I must admit, when Sword and Shield came out, I was excited to go and play them, then started playing them, and I was thinking, oh, this may have passed me by. This series now, I may have sort of dropped out for too long, and actually this series is something that isn't what I remember it being and isn't what I want it to be. I mean, I still go back and play the old Pokemon games relatively regularly, but I don't think that the new Pokemon games are really the Pokemon games I want. I think that what that is doing is interesting. I don't actually know if I'm going to play it, man. I really don't. It didn't look great the last time I seen it. It really didn't.
I mean, that's fair enough. I think you could be right that you've just kind of moved beyond that series. I think it will still be a big hit, but yeah.
Oh, in terms of units sold, it will be fucking huge.
I think even critically, like if it can get anywhere close to that vision that it seems to be promising, I think people will respond positively to that, even if it isn't quite Pokemon Breath of the Wild in the way that people have been wanting, obviously. But,
yeah, I would agree with that.
So moving on to what was formerly known as
the month of death.
Yeah, fucking hell, February. Although a lot of the games that were scheduled to come out in February have kind of moved because of some of the stuff that's dropped into that space. But I've got a really quick list here I'll rattle through of some of the highlights just from February alone that are coming. They include Life is Strange Remastered, Dying Light 2, Sifu, Horizon Forbidden West, Elden Ring, and Crossfire X, the story campaign that Remedy did for Crossfire X, which is exciting stuff. I mean, that is a stacked month. There are definitely 2 Game of the Year contenders in there straight off the bat.
Oh, sure. I mean, the big 2 are Horizon and Elden Ring, obviously.
Which one are you playing first?
Well, that's a difficult question. It will depend on how long I think it will take me to finish Horizon. I think. Because Horizon comes first, right? Horizon's out.
I think so. But I mean, it's
I
a
don't
matter
think there's
of
much in it, though.
10 days or something, yeah.
So not 10 days will be the answer. I don't know. I'll need to see what I'm playing at the time, what's happening. I don't know what one I'm going to play first. I strongly suspect I will like Elden Ring more, but I also suspect that Horizon might be one of the best games I've played in the last 5 years. So I am pretty high on Elden Ring, and rightly so. I mean, those trailers look fucking ridiculous. But even those other ones, I mean, even the Life is Strange remasters, man, they're fucking great games.
Yeah.
Like, if anyone hasn't played them and the remasters come out, go and play them. They're absolutely great. Even the Remedy Crossfire X, I mean, it's ultimately something I'm not going to end up playing, but man, I'm interested to see what it turns out to be.
Exactly, you know? Yeah, and like how exciting that ends up being. Yeah, for me, Sifu there as well is one I'm excited about. The people in the industry are getting excited about it. We've just been talking about Dying Light 2, so
another fucking roguelike.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. So yeah, plenty there. But actually, Mark, I think March has become pretty stacked as well, probably because stuff has slipped out of February to a certain extent. In that month, we've got games including Gran Turismo 7, Triangle Strategy, Tunic, Stranger of Paradise, Final Fantasy Origins, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, which was just announced, and now it's got a release date that's really soon, which is quite weird. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. You've got the GTA 5 and online SKUs for the next gen. You've also got WWE 2K22, which is a big reboot of that, hopefully, because it fucking died a death. So
yeah, what was it? Ukes don't make it anymore.
That's right. Yeah, it's Visual Concepts now.
That's right. Yeah.
So, and again, like, I don't think there's a massive standout there in terms of like a Game of the Year candidate necessarily, but as a list of games, and
I mean, it's not bad, is it? I mean, for me, the one that stands out is Final Fantasy Origins. Obviously, I mean, huge fan of that.
Gotta kill chaos, man.
Gotta kill chaos, absolutely. As the trailer made painfully clear. But I mean, probably the second one in that list for me is Tunic.
It's Tunic, definitely.
Absolutely. Like, I think that game looks fucking incredible. We've known about that game for a long time. And it's finally dropping. I think it looks fantastic. I think it's comfortably going to be an indie game of the year conversation if it plays half as good as it fucking looks, frankly. So yeah, and as well, like Tiny Tina's Wonderland, I'm sure that'll grab an audience. You know, I mean, it's basically fantasy Borderlands, so that whole crowd will be in and about it. I think what they're doing with the narrative there, the sort of D&D thing, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. You know, I mean, I hope that they do something interesting there rather than just being fantasy Borderlands. You know,
yeah, that's my fear about it. But hopefully they can kind of pull something out the bag there and maybe breathe a wee bit of more life into that franchise going forward. Actually, the rest of the year is pretty unfixed at the moment. Some of the major games that we do have kind of at least release months for, if not full dates, include Forspoken, the Square Enix developed PS exclusive.
Yeah, I have to say that's one of the other games that I keep on seeing more of it, and the more I see, the more I'm like, is this going to be good? However, the movement and the combat in that game looks insane. Everything else looks a bit skeptical.
Yeah, it feels quite on the line to me at the moment in terms of it has the look, not the character models, I'll grant you, but it has the look of of a tech demo in terms of how it plays.
Yeah, specifically that UE5 tech
exactly
demo.
that one, but then with the sort of writing and general charm of something much older and not very interesting.
Yep, I would agree with that. Yeah.
So you've got that coming in May. You've got the Saints Row reboot coming in July. You've hopefully, I've only put this in because I was dead excited about it. You've got Scorn coming in October, which keeps getting pushed.
Yeah. I mean,
I just want to see what this is really.
It gave that what was it? What was the guy's name?
HR Geiger.
HR Geiger. Yeah, man. I mean, that screaming HR Geiger. That game
just looks intriguing. And then speaking of screaming in space, the big game at the end of the year that we know about at the moment is Starfield in November coming from.
Of course. The first, is it the first major game released after the acquisition as like an Xbox exclusive, not like Deathloop,
unless something else comes out before then.
Has a lot of weight on its shoulders. I must admit, I mean, we've only seen cinematic stuff from it so far as I'm aware, or maybe a little bit of gameplay, but nothing major.
No gameplay really. No, just cinematics and a bit of kind of.
I mean, from
information.
cinematics, it looks cool. I must admit, I thought it was going to be much more fantasy than it is, whereas it looks a bit more in space, but in a sort of interstellar / Martian sort of way.
Real humans going to space type thing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very intrigued by Starfield as well. So,
yeah,
you know,
I have a horrible feeling it might flop, but
I didn't want to say it out loud, but me too.
Yeah, I mean that's partly. I mean, I've just definitely got a bit of a bias against their type of games. They don't really appeal to me.
You fucking loved Skyrim.
I liked Skyrim. I played it for a bit, and then I sort of felt like I had my fun with it and moved off. I don't love Fallout games. I've not really played any of the other Elder Scrolls games. You know, I don't know. Don't get me wrong. I hope it goes okay because a lot of people are really excited about it, and it would be the start of an exciting new franchise for sure. But I don't know.
I always want new IP to succeed.
Yeah.
If you're taking a stab at new IP, like I want that to go well.
I guess
you know?
I just don't want it to just be Fallout, but with a space skin put on it. You know what I mean? Or Skyrim, but with a space skin put. I hope there's more invention there.
Yeah, I suspect it probably will be.
I think it probably will be, yeah, and janky as
at the
fuck
same time, I don't
it.
actually think that's a bad thing. Like Fallout in space, like I've got no problem with that. You know?
I suppose. And so just to rattle through really quickly some of the other games that currently don't have release dates at the moment. Some of these I'll ask you what you think about them. Some of them I'm going to ask you, unfortunately, do you think we're actually going to see them this year?
Interesting.
But yeah, to rattle through a few, you don't need to comment on all of these. A Plague Tale Requiem, I think, is one that it looks really interesting.
It's made me want to play the first game. Is how
definitely
good the trailers for the new one look. It looks fantastic.
Which is high praise, I think, really.
High praise. Honestly, that game looks phenomenal.
Yeah.
And a lot of people had a lot of high praise for the first one. It just sort of passed me by, but I want to play the first one. That game looks fantastic.
Yeah. Another game that's definitely in your to be played pile, Bayonetta 3, Mark.
Oh, God save me. I want to play it so badly.
Are we getting it this year? Are you confident that we'll? Well, it seems pretty ready. I would
agree. I think that we probably are getting it this year. Yeah, I would say that there's about an 80+% chance of us getting it this year. I feel pretty good about getting it.
I think those are good odds, yeah. You've got a bit of a double header. You've got the Callisto Protocol and you've got the Dead Space reboots, both supposed to come out this year.
Dead Space reboot, I think, is probably almost certainly coming out this year. Callisto Protocol, not so much. I think that is 30% coming out this year, 50-50 at best. But again, looks fantastic. And I mean, what a fantastic team behind that kind of game.
Exactly. So, people are originally involved in Dead Space. That's the one that's connected to the PUBG universe in a sort of nebulous way as well.
Yeah, I think it is weirdly. Yeah. There's some weirdness going on there. But anyway, I don't think it's got anything to do with PUBG.
No.
Focus on the Dead Space aspect.
Yeah, I just think it's really interesting to build your franchises out like that. I think that's cool. Some other ones, a couple of PlayStation exclusives, Ghostwire Tokyo.
I think that's got a good chance because that was supposed to come out last year. I think that's got a good chance.
I think that probably will land. I wasn't massively impressed with the last few things.
Bethesda game that will probably ever be on PlayStation.
Pretty much. Then God of War Ragnarok, Mark. Is this game of the year?
If it comes out this year, it's very much in contention, yes. I think that it is 50-50 at best that comes out this year, to be totally honest. I don't mean to be pessimistic, but them's the breaks.
I definitely think it could slide, and I would rather it slides to make it right rather than rushing it out the door.
I think we may be looking at another Horizon situation next year. You know what I mean? It coming out January, February next year, rather than it's intended before Christmas this year.
It also, it came out in the March-April slot originally in 2018 as well. So
totally fucking killed it.
I do think that poses a question of what else PlayStation have. Similar to this year where their last big game of the year was Deathloop and they didn't produce that in-house. I don't know that after Horizon, if they don't put out God of War, that they have a big seller that we currently know about.
I'm thinking that it might be a similar situation where we have Horizon early doors, Ghostwire Tokyo later on. And then to be honest with you, there probably is something that they've not told us about that will come out this year. But yeah, in terms of like knockout huge top tier IP like that, honestly, not a great deal.
No, I don't think so. A couple of others that I guess there's a question about whether we'll see them. You've got Gotham Knights.
Oh, 50-50 at best. I mean, honestly, I thought we were going to see that game last year. I mean, maybe I'll say more than that then.
Yeah.
Maybe there is a good chance of that because we've seen so much gameplay and the game's still not here. What's going on there?
That's it, yeah. It is time to get that out the door.
People have had hands-on with it like over a year ago.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And then, obviously, the flip side of that is Suicide Squad, which, again, we saw a little bit of at the Game
less
Awards,
chance of that, I would say.
I think that looks like it needs more time.
The two of them coming out in the same year seems like bad business strategy.
Well, to throw into that mix as well, you've also got Hogwarts Legacy and you've also got the Lego Star Wars game, which all are under Warner Brothers, along with the two Batman-related games.
That Lego Star Wars game doesn't really factor into it. It's catering for a totally different audience. I'm sure it will be great and I'm sure it will hit that audience. Those Lego games are absolutely fantastic, by the way, for anyone that's not played any of them. I would say that Hogwarts Legacy is pretty unlikely. Did that not get a delay recently or something like that? Is it not getting kicked down the road?
I can't remember. I mean, it feels like no one wants to talk about that game just now because of the J.K. Rowling issues.
Shut the fuck up. Yeah.
I would be stunned if we saw that. I think of all of those, I mean, the Lego Star Wars game I think is a dead cert to come out. I just don't think we have a month for it yet. But of all the others there, I think Gotham Knights is the one that will actually drop this year.
Between that and Suicide Squad or Harry Potter, definitely Gotham Knights.
Your other big Game of the Year contender, Mark, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Part 2.
I think it's as likely to come out this year as God of War, to be honest. I think it's 50-50 at best.
Going back to our conversation earlier about the Switch Pro, I still think that they would consider holding that game until they've got new hardware.
No. I think it will come out this generation of Switch because I'm honestly I'm thinking 2024 is a long way away.
That's true. I mean? That is
so
true.
They could have another Zelda on the back burner. They could have another Mario game ready to go for that. No, that's coming out. Again, similarly to God of War, I either think that it's coming out as intended for Christmas this year or Q1 probably February next year.
I could see them delaying it, even just looking at the other games that Nintendo have potentially on the slate for this year. As we mentioned, Pokemon, Triangle Strategy, Kirby, Mario plus Rabbids is due to come out this year or so far at least. Bayonetta, Splatoon 3.
Oh, another big one. Yeah, they're definitely pushing that, man. Yeah.
And then Breath of the Wild 2. They don't need that to come out this year.
They do not.
So again, that could slide into early 2023. I wouldn't be stunned by that, to be totally honest. But yeah, I think that hardware question it throws everything in the air for Nintendo. Because if they announce tomorrow a Switch Pro, all of that changes, I think.
I mean, I agree, but I don't think that's going to... I think we're past... I agree with the analyst that we were talking about earlier on. I think that the time for the Switch Pro is being and gone. We're now no longer getting a Switch Pro and we're now waiting on the next generation of Switch, which I think 2024 makes sense. Announcement in 2023. I think the Breath of the Wild comes out before that. Even if they do announce it in 2023, it's not coming out until 2024 at the earliest, and that is a long time to put that game in the back burner.
True. And one of the other big games coming out, or due to come out this year, is Redfall, and I'm actually going to throw this into a wider question about Xbox, because this will be, if not Starfield, this will be the other big Bethesda game that finally launches straight on Xbox. But at the moment, it looks to me like, in terms of Xbox games we've got coming this year, they're Redfall, there's Starfield, there's Crossfire X, and that is sort of it at the moment.
I think that, again, there's some that are probably missing from your list because they haven't been given a date and stuff like that. I think that Hellblade 2, there's a very, very good chance.
You think we'll see that? I was going to ask you that.
I think there's a very, very good chance that something like that will come out this year. And that looks as if it has exploded in scope since the first game. And God almighty, that trailer was fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, fucking hell, it was fantastic. It really was. So yeah, I think that we're not seeing the full picture from Xbox yet. I don't think. Similarly with PlayStation, to be honest with you, I don't think we're seeing the full picture there either. I still think that we're waiting for maybe a couple of things to get a date here or there, basically, specifically on the Xbox side with that Bethesda catalogue as well. But at the same time, yeah, I think that Hellblade is quite likely from the Xbox side. Other than that, difficult to think about the Bethesda stuff, I suppose. Yeah, I suppose it probably is Redfall and Starfield. But I mean, if those two games come out in a year, that is no bad thing for Bethesda.
It's definitely no bad thing for Xbox. I just don't know that there's loads of top quality there. But like you say, we might get more. There's rumours that Forza Motorsport will come back next year. I would really hope for Hellblade 2. Maybe we finally get an update on Everwild, although I think that's probably further away than it's ever been.
Much down the road.
And obviously with Xbox, there could be more acquisitions and everything could change.
Sure,
anyway,
yeah.
But I just look at
bought EA next and FIFA's the next big game.
I just think if you look at the list of games that PlayStation versus Xbox have at least penciled for this year, Horizon, God of War, Gran Turismo 7, Forspoken, Ghostwire, Tokyo, and Babylon's Fall are all coming as exclusives. Xbox has Redfall, Starfield, Crossfire X. I guess Deathloop actually will come to Xbox this year.
Xbox fans, you can get that one a pass.
Well, it'll be on Game Pass, so why not? But Stalker 2 and Scorn potentially. So So there's an imbalance there, but obviously the real thing about Xbox is that they're going to just stuff great stuff into Game Pass.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, they don't need big heavy hitters because they've got Game Pass.
So are you expecting this to be a really stellar year for games? Do you think we will actually see a lot of delays and that this won't be the picture really come the end of the year?
I think that we will probably see quite a few delays, yeah. But that being said, even if we don't get God of War and Breath of the Wild 2, and I think that if those two games come out, along with the games that we are sort of more sure will come out, then this is still a fantastic fucking year for games. But if the two of them come out, and Starfield, I suppose, which is also slated for the end of the year, if all three of them come out, as well as the stuff coming out earlier this year and the stuff that we're expecting in the middle of the year, like, my God, this is going to be a fantastic fucking year for games. But even if they don't make it, it's still pretty fucking good. I'm still not complaining.
Yeah, there's some real mega hits in that lineup, and some. I mean, these are only the big games that we already know about. There's going to be countless really exciting indies and AA games.
There's something that is going to be amazing that we don't even know about.
Exactly,
yet, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, I'm excited for this year. I really hope that some of the other situations that we've spoken about a lot last year, unionization and industry trauma, gets addressed a bit this year. I hope the console shortages can start to be resolved,
alleviated a little bit, hopefully.
And hopefully we can start to see the return of in-person big events, because I think we are really missing that. And let's really hope that we don't see the explosion of play-to-earn NFTs and blockchain gaming. I think that is the negative trend for the year ahead, probably. So
it really is.
But yeah, let's stick to the games. Let's enjoy these motherfucking great-looking games that are coming.
Yeah, because they do look fantastic. Let's ignore all that bullshit, because some of the games coming out this year look fucking insane. Look so good.
Here's to it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think we'll have to call it a day there. I'd like to remind everyone that you can find PlayersToo on all social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at PlayersToo.com. That's PlayerSToo.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, and you can now rate on Spotify, which I forgot to say at the beginning, you should do that, ladies and gentlemen. That would be absolutely awesome if you could do that as well. Again, it just really helps us out, helps the exposure of the show, and thank you so much to anyone that's already done that for us. It genuinely does mean a lot, and it helps us out a huge amount. I'd like to remind everyone that our play-along game for this month is Hades, which we have both alluded to earlier in the podcast. I think we're going to have a really interesting discussion on that, so make sure you tune in for that one, and please play the game if you can beforehand. But even if not, I think that there's been a lot of discourse around this game, and I think a lot of people know what the game is even still. So, and you need to play it more, definitely, as well, because I know that you've not started that long ago.
Yeah, I've not played much yet, but I'm getting really into it. I probably had one of my longest gaming sessions for a while just the other night, playing through a bit of Hades, because it has exactly what I was looking for. When I was saying at the start of the show,
there's lots of end points. There's lots of areas where you can just go, this is enough for tonight.
It's absolutely that, but it's got a mindlessness to it, and that sounds negative. But when I was saying saying at the top of the show that I was finding something like Metroid Dread quite stressful, this is just like, I'm just wading through and I'm going to kill stuff, and when I die, because I will die, it doesn't matter. That's part of the whole thing. So it's definitely just really enjoyable. So yeah, looking forward to playing more and talking about it.
Yeah, man, definitely. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next week.
Thanks.